speaker is Robert Delwood, who's lived all over the place, including Seattle for a dozen years, then Chicago, and now lives in San Antonio. And he has a long and storied career, including helping keeping astronauts in clean underwear. He says if the astronaut didn't appreciate it, their crew members did. I will let you imagine the specifics there. And has also been doing API doc writing for a long time. And here to talk about it once again is Robert Delwood.
Hey guys. Hi. So my name is Robert Delwood, and I want to thank you for having me here today. We're going to be talking about 4 stages of OpenAPI. A lot of people don't anticipate problems when they convert from a non-OpenAPI project to an OpenAPI project, and it causes some frustration. So that's what this talk is going to be. A little bit about myself. My name is Robert Delwood. I am a programmer, writer, and programmer writer. And a programmer writer is just another name for an API writer, but there's a little bit of emphasis on having a development background. In fact, the original API writers were specifically called programmer writers because that's where the writers came from. They were developers who converted. So I am a developer. I've been a titled developer for I'm sorry. I've been entitled. I'm sorry. It keeps falling off. Thanks. So I've been a titled developer for more than half my career. I've been a tech writer for more than half my career. And if you add up those 2 numbers, you don't get exactly 1, because API writing is the combination of 2 skills. You're combining APIs with the development. So I do other things. I am or have been an office developer. I write applications and scripts to automate Word and Excel, and I'm a tools writer, which means I write specific one-off software tools that solve one problem. In fact, at one job, that's all I did was to go around to different groups and help them with the tools. I've been lucky in I worked for some great companies. I got my start at Microsoft, and I was at NASA in Johnson Space Center for 17 years. I also worked for Northrop Grumman. So there are some the standard disclaimers here. This is not the only way of doing things. This is my experience. These are my opinions. I think they have value. I've been doing it for a long time. They've been tested, and I do clearly advocate these ideas. But it's not the only way of doing it. This is an art. So API writing is an art. It's not a science. Computer is a science. You've heard of computer science. Within some restrictions, you are free. I encourage everyone to try new ideas to get to the goal. Also, my mileage may vary. So every company, every project, every team, every writer is different. So of course, you're going to get different results. So this saying has nothing to do with this talk. Do be aware that anyone can write documentation. That's not the hard part. It's getting what I call great documentation that's a challenge. Documentation that is so clear, so unequivocal, so unambiguous that it demands them to do it right the first time. So who is this talk meant for? It's meant for the curious, the technical writer who wants to get into API writing, and they want to know what what they'll be getting into. It's also for the person who's already in this job, the tech writer who's already already doing it, but doesn't know what they're getting into. And finally, managers. So one misconception that few people understand: API documentation writing is not tech writing, and it's a mistake to treat it as tech writing. And I'll have some examples and instances of that later. So if the manager isn't used to working with API writers, if they treat API projects as standard technical, as standard tech writing projects, it's going to be a disaster. And you can quote me on this. It'll be a disaster for the project, for the manager, for the company, and for the individual writer. Being forewarned here is being forearmed, literally. So the tools I use. Again, this has nothing to do directly with my talks, just everyone likes to know, talk about tools. So I use Redocly for my rendering engine. It's the best in the business. If you're not using it, seriously, consider switching over. API documentation writing is about code, and we have to use coder tools. In this case, coding tools like Microsoft Code, Visual Studio Code, JetBrains IntelliJ, and I think it's just Eclipse. I also use Notepad, one of the best text editors out there. You people on the Mac are missing out because you're not using Notepad++. Tools I don't use. So there's nothing wrong with most of these tools. These are fine tools. They just don't apply to API writing. So I don't use Word. In fact, we're usually converting from Word. PDFs. There is a whole slew of alternate API tools out there. README, Spotlight. They're good, but I just don't consider them professional enough to be enterprise grade. Also, Swagger. This is a term you just don't want to use. Swagger is no longer a product, no longer being supported. It's actually a suite of products by, I think, MuleSoft. They're purchased by MuleSoft. People who don't even know what APIs are will use the word Swagger. Don't. It has nothing to do with Swagger. It's OpenAPI. So what I'm going to be talking about is four things: a brief overview of OpenAPI, where to start in converting it, the 4 steps in converting it, and finally, if there are any questions. So a brief overview. I'm not going to be talking too much about the details. What is OpenAPI? I'm going to back up a second here and talk about what is in API. So API is essentially the capability of 2 computer components to talk to each other. There has to be a common language between the software, Microsoft Word, and the hardware printer, so they can print. That communications is the API. The documentation of that API is API documentation, and that's what we do. So we can hand someone else our standard, and if they comply to it, then those 2 components can talk. Came out about 2014 or 2016, depending how you look at it. And it is a remarkable solution to a very tricky problem. A bunch of smart people came together in 2016 and decided to come up with an open API standard, a standard format in describing APIs. It is a specification. It is a very detailed specification. It tells you what It defines the tags you can use, the structure, how to use them, the values that the tags can and can't have. It's enforceable, so if you write a plugin, it is so strict of a specification that if you write a plugin such as VS Code has, it will tell you immediately when there's a mistake in your code. It's structured, so everything has a place in the document. It's not random. There are hierarchies. Some tags can only have a specific number of tags under it. Tags just can't go anywhere. You can't have just values. You can't make up tag names. That leads to a consistency in the document. You know that every item or field is going to have the same information in the same place with the same predictable values. That consistency leads to the most important aspect, the flexibility. So if you produce a well-formed, conforming OpenAPI file, now third parties can come in and do some work for you. So an OpenAPI file is not a descriptive file like HTML is. There is no H1 tags, there are no bold tags. It's not a descriptive language like XML, where it tells you this is the title or this is the address. It's just a specification. Someone else has to come along and help you with it. For instance, Redocly comes along. If you hand Redocly a well-formed and conforming OpenAPI file, and if you notice, I do always say well-forming and well-formed and conforming for a reason, then they can do the hard work for you. But that's only possible because they know the file is legitimate. We probably use 8, 12 different tools in our processing. We use Redocly, of course. We have various CLI command line options that we can transform OpenAPI into JSON or HTML back again. We can split it up into other files. We can combine it into a single file. But that's the power of the OpenAPI. You have a community that's doing this for you. So a brief look at what OpenAPI is. It's a tag-oriented language. If you notice, there's tags on the left side of the colon and a value or description on the right side, and then using a third party tool, you can then render it into into a readable and usable application or whatever you need it to do. So you've decided to go OpenAPI. I think it's the right decision. It creates a very modern API suite, and there are four stages to it. You can use it for, and this is usually a hierarchy. There's new documentation, maintenance, specifications, prototyping, and API first. And I'll explain each one of those in turn. So the new documentation is basically that. You don't have an open API file, and you want to convert in existing API, such as in Word or Flare, into open API. Now, this is going to be the toughest part of the process, and this is the part that no one really talks about. Everyone says, "Okay, let's go ahead and convert this," and they basically just let the developer or writer go at it, and that's not setting expectations is the problem here. So this stage has definite boundaries to it. The goal is to transfer. The initial goal is to transfer all the information of the Word file into a compilable OpenAPI in OpenAPI file. No more, no less. After all this, you may not even have a publishable document. So the The problem is, so I tell new writers new to this, everything they know about tech writing is going to be used against them now. Again, I said this is not tech writing. This is API writing, which is more akin to development. The basic switch here is that they have to change from thinking like a tech writer to thinking like a developer. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you have to be a developer or experienced coder to start. Certainly, at some point, you will get there, but you need to start thinking like a developer. So this process will take much longer than you think. I estimate three to 5 times what the tech writer thinks it should take. It looks like a simple process, but there's going to be a lot of complications that just slow things down. So we start with this is a Word file. It's unformatted. The writer sort of just has to remember what to include, where to include it. He has to remember. They have to remember the wording that they used before, and be consistent with it. And developers are notoriously bad at writing specs. So there's a couple of green boxes here. So the endpoint is bank detail, but right below it you have a different URL. There's an inconsistency there. They have account value is being required, and yet the range is from 0 to 50 characters. 50 is not, 0 does not make it a required value. So there's a bunch of inconsistencies that you will have to address. So problems along the way here is, so you can start preparing for this conversion in several ways. So you can study up on OpenAPI. You can go read the tags. That's good. It's recommended, but it's not going to be very effective by itself. You have to actually do it in order to learn it. The second way is to find a template. Go out on the web, find an API you like, download its spec, and follow it. Now that sounds really easy. That you already have a spec and you're just switching out terms. And to some point, yes, that's basically what you do. But along the way, there's going to be problems here. One, you're going to have to get to know OpenAPI. It is a language. It is a compilable language. If you write OpenAPI and go to read.docly to compile it, you may get errors. Debugging in OpenAPI is very bad. I'll admit that. So the workaround for that is to go very slowly. Do 1 or 2 changes, compile, see if it works, see if it's what you want. It's a very effective technique, but going slowly means you're going slowly. So you're losing time there. Matching up. And a minute ago I said, boy, it'd be easy just to match up values, data type integer. If it were that simple, so you're going to run across some issues. Java developers describe data types with custom names like big int. OpenAPI doesn't have big int. You're going to have to figure out what they mean by that. So if you read the description and it says the number of items in the box, probably an integer. Integer is a whole number, but you'd be lucky to have a description like that. So what you could do is write the developer, get the answers. There's going to be so many of these little things along the way, you're going to overwhelm developers. You're not going to be able to ask every question you want. You're going to have to figure out a large number of these, large amount on your own. You have to read the existing description. You have to read the examples and take a best guess at that. And if you have six or seven parameters like that, 6 or 7 items, again, it's going to slow things down. That's assuming the developers are in your time zone. A lot of my developers are in India, basically 12 hours off from me. So I'm only going to get a conversation. I'm only going to be able to send one question a day, and that's not a conversation. And you're assuming that the answer back is going to be clear. Again, developers have the knack of answering questions so perfectly ambiguous. It's exactly 50-50. No matter how precise I ask the question, yes or no, they come back with. So that's going to just delay the conversation. So you'll have to transfer all the data this way. And like I said, there's going to be missing data. It's just not going to be there. There's going to be superfluous data. You don't know what to do with. Do you include it? Do you not include it? Do you modify it? There's going to be unclear. So back to the data type example, it may say int as a data type, but the example may be 5.0, which doesn't make an integer, and it makes it a floating. And these data types are important to our clients. Like say, if you start thinking like a developer, you'll start seeing these. So which is it? Is it int? Is it 5? Is it 5.0? Should it be a float? Again, all these things take time. Excuse me. So your goal is to transfer all the information and to get a compilable version. And again, it's not going to be that simple. It's not going to be that simple, and with everything taking a little extra time, it starts adding up. Then at the end of it, you may or may not have a publishable document. Even if you transfer all the information and it compiles cleanly, you get a clean rendering. It may not be publishable. There may still be missing descriptions. So a adequate document. Every item has a description, a data type. There's about 5 to 7 of these that everyone has to have. You also have internal formatting. When items have allowed values, you can only use specific values for that field. They have to be formatted correctly, and they have to be minimally descriptive of what it's supposed to do. Just listing items isn't going to help the clients. So there's some amount of formatting that you'll have to do, which is often a separate state. So after you convert everything, move everything from the Word file, you still probably have a sizable formatting task, making sure everything is complete. Now, you haven't added much value to the docs yet. Like I said, you're only transferring what's already in the Word file, and I guarantee you that's going to be a minimally useful set of information. So during the stage, you're not adding much value to it. You're clarifying statements. You're making sure the fields are set up, but you're not adding additional descriptive descriptions yet. For instance, one of the fields may be maximum items per load, with the restriction that this field is used only if flight for products allowed. You can use an airplane only if that value is not included. Well, that's useful information for the developers, and you're going to have to find that out over time. A publishable document is the minimum set of information needed that the developers can use your documentation to create create their application. Which takes us into, okay. So along the way, so this is not a pointless exercise here. So along the way, you're going to learn a couple things. After you do one conversion, you're going to be pretty proficient in OpenAPI. OpenAPI is rich enough that you never really become an expert in it. There's a lot of really fine detail, but you can get 50, 60, 70% along the way to be familiar with it. It does support Markdown. You can't avoid Markdown. That's generally the formatting language they use. If you didn't know Markdown before, you'll have a good handle on it here. Markdown is good, but it doesn't solve all of our problems. There's going to be some HTML required here. You'll learn some of that along the way. Also, you're going to be changing your relationship with the developers. So most of the time, I've seen developers treat writers as almost secretaries. They tell them what to do, and the writers do it. We're changing that now. We're going to become more equals. We're going to have to ask them development questions, and we're going to have to know the reason why we're asking. We're not asking what is an int. You're going to say this int, this example does not match the data type. You're going to move up to be equals with them. Over time, you will be able to compete toe to toe on development issues, and this change is a very important change. Once they see that we can be developers, and that we are equals with them, we can get much better information out to the clients. And finally, you'll also get to know the API suite you're working with. It takes a little. If you have a suite that's 30, 40, or 50 calls, it's not intuitive what happens with each call, what each call does. After this conversion, you'll have a good idea of what everything does, the sequence in things doing it. And how to do sequences using the API. In fact, later on, it's probably likely you'll even get to write a tutorial about how to use this, and that's a plain white paper explanation to the developer, walking them through step by step and giving them information. So the second step, so if that's the hardest step, then the maintenance phase is probably the longest one, but it's much easier. You already have the conversion, you have a publishable document. Now this is actually the fun part of the process. You get to add in information. You get to fill in all the missing details. So clearly, the stuff you have to add are new features the developers are adding, and that's through ticket or ticket based, or they'll let you know. So anything new they do, you have to update. What's not obvious is and this is another difference between tech writing and technical API writing. Is that this is a bottomless pit. And what I mean by that is there is always more detail you can add. There's always more detail, more explanation, more better descriptions. So it's not a question of, am I done with a document? It's more, at what percentage of done are we comfortable with? And again, managers, this is a new concept to a lot of managers. So you'll just spend most of the time you're adding stuff. You'll be probably using Postman to actually run the call, see what it does, confirm that what goes into the call is what gets out and is documented. skip that. So the third concept is prototyping. This is sort of a custom method that I've come up with, but I like it. So whenever you have a new API or new set of endpoints, the traditional way of doing it is to write it out in Excel or Word and list it down. I advocate doing actually the API writer and the PM get together and write the OpenAPI. They can see it on the screen. They can sort of test out everything ahead of time. Don't involve the developers yet. In fact, the process is backwards from the developers. You start with the response, what information you want the call to return. Then you work backwards and figure out what inputs you need to get those. And by using OpenAPI, everything's on the screen and is very clear, very visually engaging. Finally, the last thing is API first. So OpenAPI was actually designed for an API first approach. And what this is the conventional way of coding is called code first, is now called code first. That's where the developers go off by themselves. They write the code, then they tell the documentation what to do. And obviously you can see that there's a huge disconnect with that. For API first, now the developers are writing the OpenAPI first in a fashion, very similar fashion to what I just described. But the two keys here are that they can generate code from the OpenAPI, not the other way, not the other way around. And the writer gets to be guaranteed a most accurate, up-to-date set of information. This is the only time I know of that both developers and writers will be working in the same file. And far from being chaotic or problematic, it is a perfect example of coexistence and world peace. World peace through OpenAPI. The developers only touch the description tags, and the writers only touch the description tags, and the developers can change everything else. Keep the separation, and you have a fine, accurate, up-to-date doc. So that's it in a nutshell. Oh, thanks.
Ugh.
Hey.
Nicely done. Thank you so much for your talk, Robert. I think a lot of people find API docs maybe a little bit mystifying or scary, and so it's always a good thing, I think, to have somebody break it down a little bit.
Thanks. So I will put a plug in. I do have an unconference later this afternoon about getting started in API. It's not that scary. People make it out to be scary. It's not. I have 3 simple steps in starting.
Do you have thoughts on why people find it scary?
I'm sorry?
Do you have thoughts on why people find it scary? And do you have common counter arguments to that?
Yeah. So people think it's scary because it's so documentation related. Everyone thinks they have to know, be a developer or know programming before you even get started. And then there's a question, probably the third most common question, what's the best language to start with? Yes, it is developer oriented. Yes, I said you have to you have to be in the developer mindset at some point, but not necessarily to start. If you treat it as a craft, learn a little bit each day, go back and update what you learned the day before, you will eventually keep moving to the right on the spectrum. It's not as intimidating as people think.
That leads in nicely to our first question. Do you think that that movement into getting comfortable with it, do you think that differs between if you're a developer versus if you're a tech writer?
I'm sorry, rephrase the question.
Yeah,
So
so
sorry.
based on your background, right? If you're coming to APIs from a development background or a tech writing background, do you think that changes how you would approach it?
It changes how soon you get to certain stages. Yes, I'm a developer, and I'll admit that gives me an edge in this. I can immediately talk to developers in their language, in their jargon. I sometimes correct their code. There's a lot of things that developers can do to help documentation without actually writing. And I like fill names. I really don't like stupid fill names like max pub dev ID. No one knows what that is. If the developers were to change that, maximum publication ID, now the client developers have a fighting chance at knowing what to do. And I don't think this is our job as writers to enforce that UX, developer experience back to the owning developers.
Right, thanks. We also had quite a few questions on tooling. I think a couple of people were wondering why the huge enthusiasm for Redocly as opposed to other tools. What specifically makes it the best in your opinion?
It is a very clean, it's a very clean, very visually appealing interface. What a lot of people don't do when they examine interfaces is actually use it to create the product. So finding the description, understanding how it's laid out is very important. There are some, for example, one of the editors I don't like requires so many clicks to open up everything. You have to go to the response and click response body. Then you may have 2 or 3 objects, and it's just continually clicking, and you don't know where this is, and the find feature just doesn't work. Redocly doesn't have that. It opens up cleanly, everything's there. It has a great find, and you go exactly to where you need without clicking.
Makes sense. So it's more about how easy it is to maintain as opposed to the final product that customers see?
It is. It's actually both.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like I said. It's a very clean, very efficient interface. But everything's there. It's well laid out. You can find stuff quickly and efficiently.
Great. They should be paying you.
Is Redocly
He's not
here?
saying no.
Is Heather here?
I really like this question from Ed. Do you ever consider use cases and explanatory documentation at the same time that you're creating the API spec and reference? And if so, what does that process look like?
Okay, so on my LinkedIn site, I have a blurb that if you ever meet anyone who thinks that API is the only documentation, send them to me. API is on the API reference guide. While clearly the most important, if you only have one, that's the one you want. But it can't be the only one. Think of it as a dictionary. It's a dictionary with a word and the meaning. It's very good, but it doesn't explain grammar. It doesn't explain how to use it. It doesn't explain when to use it. So you will need getting started. You will need how-tos. User guides. You have to have all of these to get a really good API and SDK suite. Remember, our goal is to create great documentation, which means they have all the information where they need to find it, complete enough so that they don't have to think what choice they choose, and that requires other documentation. But it's sequential too, because you have to get the reference guide first, and only then do you have the freedom to go off and do these white papers. But yes, these other white papers are absolutely required.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the time that we have for the Q&A. What time is your unconference session?
I don't know.
Okay, well, check the schedule.
I don't remember. It's on the board.
As long as you show up when everybody else does, that's all we need. Well, thank you. Another
thanks.
hand for Robert, please.